In comparison to the vast majority of cars that we discuss in Unsung Heroes, this vehicle is far from being the most obscure or the weirdest. In fact, I would wager it's probably one of the best known cars that we've talked about, certainly one of the best known supercar concepts, the Maybach Exelero. Now, for those who don't know, Maybach is of course a German brand. They've now re-merged with Mercedes, and back in the day they used to be kind of like what Rolls-Royce was to Bentley in terms of Maybach to Mercedes. That just god tier of luxury, if you will, with fantastic performance as well, but basically the ultimate blend of both, especially way back in the day. Whereas in modern times, they tend to be compared a little bit more to stuff like Hummer. Yes, it's a statement, but is it necessarily a statement that you want to make? I mean, you could have a classy Rolls-Royce, but why when you can have a glitzy, cheesy Maybach? That was kind of the idea behind the 57 and the 62, which are basically these blown-up Mercedes S-Class models in the later 2000s. You can buy them dirt cheap now with a massive spec, and they are very fast cars. You're talking like a 2.5-ton limo that's as quick as a Maserati Quattroporte. That's not bad, of course not. 5.5-litre V12 engine. They're impressive in a certain sense, but they just don't really have the class that something like a Rolls-Royce or a Bentley is typically known for. However, the Exelero is a very different animal. It's a car which, as I said, many of you have probably seen, and most people who are aware of the car tend to know one or two things about it in particular. And those two things usually are that A, it was made to prove what tyres could do. That's true, and we'll get into that in a second. And the second one is actually a myth, and that is that it was sold to a rapper for $8 million. That's actually wrong. It's a very strong urban legend, but it's totally wrong, at least according to the current owners of the car, by the name of Mechatronic in Germany. They say that before they had it, nobody else purchased it. And it is understandable why certain people would probably assume that. It was featured even in the Jay-Z music video, as certain other vehicles have been. It was featured in movies as well, much like the Cadillac 16 and the Chrysler ME412, and some other supercar concepts as well. Now, the portion that I mentioned regarding tyres is 100% true. This vehicle was designed and built purely for the purpose of proving what a set of tyres could do. And that sounds crazy, and somewhat ironically means that this car has more in common with that absolutely crazy Citroën PLR that we talked about way back in this same series. That car was, of course, as well designed to test tyres, but in a slightly different way. This one was actually commissioned by a German company called Fulda, who are a subsidiary of Goodyear, to prove what their new, at the time, Carrot Exelero tyres could do. They needed a vehicle that was large, heavy, powerful, luxurious, and fast, that could do at least 350 kilometers an hour. An autobahn storming luxury monster that could really show what these tyres were capable of. And that, of course, is what the Exelero did, because this car is an absolute beast. Now, the chassis and the platform of the car is actually based on the Maybach 57, which is usually a 4-door limo, so it's no surprise that this is a very long car. It's also extremely heavy. It weighs about the same as my Touareg, 2.6 tons, in fact close to 2.7. It is a very hefty supercar, especially for a 2-door, 2-seater. Now, in many ways, it has some similarities to the Mercedes SLR concept in particular. The original, far less pretty version of the SLR McLaren. It has, I believe, the same wheels. If not the same, they're certainly the same design. Those 5-spoke turbine wheels. The interior is very reminiscent as well of the SLR, with black, grey and red. Carbon fibre here and there, etc. And even the design of the vehicle itself is kind of reminiscent of that more long-distance GT style that the SLR was going for. But don't get too comfortable in terms of thinking that you know what I'm talking about here if you are already familiar with the Maybach, because I'm about to drop another little nugget of information on you. Maybach didn't even build it. How crazy is that? You would think, of course, I mean, why wouldn't you, that Maybach built their own car? They did not. In fact, this car isn't even German. It's Italian. It was built by an Italian company who can trace their lineage back to 1919 called Stoller, who actually build concept cars for various manufacturers. It's not even German. It's not a Maybach at all. And here's the crazy thing as well. The car lived on after Maybach, because of course they only built one, as another concept car, a far lesser known called the Stoller Falcon, which I'll include a couple of images of in the video. It's a hideous looking thing, which of course you can tell is based on the same platform. It has different lights, a different grille, it's finished in like a goldish yellow, which really doesn't suit the car, but it does have even more power. I'm not sure what the story is on that one. I guess because Stoller technically built the car, they would have the rights to do something like that, but I don't really know if they intended to ever produce it, or if it was, as I kind of alluded to, just an example for other manufacturers of what they can do, because that is their job at the end of the day, working with various companies to build these show cars. But that version, which was shown in 2007, the Stoller Falcon, had basically a similar engine, but it was tuned by Brabus up to about 750 horsepower with over 1,000 pound-feet of torque. That does supersede what the Exelero itself had in this original form, which was a 5.9-litre twin-turbo V12 with, again, a very SLR-style 5-speed gearbox, just under 700 horsepower, just over 750 pound-feet of torque, and, true to their word, the car did not do 350 kilometers an hour or 217 miles an hour. It could do 218. So it was just that little bit quicker, and in some of the Google images that you can see for this car, if you do search it up, you can see it with those very distinctive high-speed aero wheels, which completely cover the spokes, for that little bit of extra aerodynamic advantage when they're taking it, I believe, around the Nardo circuit in Italy, where the Volkswagen W12 has its name from. Now, the design of the Exelero does tend to be the thing that most people pay most attention to, really, rather than the performance, because we are literally talking about a 2.6-ton coupe that's faster than a Ferrari Enzo. That's pretty impressive for top speed at least, and of course it certainly proved the point of what those tyres could do. But at the same time, this car's design was actually not just a ground-up, wacky Vision GT from Gran Turismo kind of idea. It actually traces its roots back to Maybach itself, to a car called the SW38, which you can clearly see the inspiration from. It's one of those long, swoopy, like 30s-style gangster cars, and this clearly has a lot of inspiration there. So once again, huge similarities to what Cadillac did with the 16 in a very similar vein. And ultimately, the reason why I believe this car deserves to be an unsung hero is not just that it's rare and obscure and a one-off, which it is, but also because this is a car which has that second layer of history which barely anyone seems to talk about, such as that it wasn't even built by Maybach, that there was a second version built by Stoller. Again, these things that people often don't know and certainly don't talk about that much, but even because this car did not fail. Unlike many of the cars that we all know and love from Unsung Heroes, this one is not a failure. It didn't try to race and lose, it didn't try to be produced and fail, it didn't even set out for a speed and not achieve it. It did achieve exactly what it was designed for. They were never going to race it, they were never planning on producing it, so it didn't fail at either of those things. It was designed purely for one thing and one thing only. And it achieved it. It proved what those tyres could do, and at the same time, it proved that Maybach is not just an ugly face. They can achieve fantastic performance, because the performance that this car has is actually incredible. To get a 2.7-ton, 700 horsepower car to hit 218 miles an hour and hit 60 in about 4.4 seconds, with only a 5-speed gearbox to be working with and rear-wheel drive, that is no small task, and this car knocked it out of the park. It's a car which has an insane design. It certainly doesn't really look like anything else apart from the Stoller Falcon, I guess you could say. It's a car which has almost like this cult-level status amongst concept supercars, and overall, I certainly think it deserves a place in Unsung Heroes. So if you are new to Unsung Heroes, I do want to point out, as always, that if you click the link down below, you can jump over to the Discord chat page for this channel and actually vote on this car or any of the previous ones. So then when we hit that big episode 100, we're going to be counting down the community's 10 favourite cars that we've ever talked about. And don't worry, the season is not ending, the series is not ending, we've got plenty more to come. It's just a nice little way to celebrate the milestone of 100 cars. So if you get the chance, jump over and take a look at that, and of course, click the playlist here on screen to see all of the previous episodes in this pretty wacky series. But until next time, I'll see you then, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.